for the very, very last session of DLD 24, I would like to call back on stage our great DLD co-chairman, Yossi Vardi. And again, I have to say here, coram publicum, I owe this guy so much. I learned so much from you.
Go ahead, continue.
And you know, what I learned from him is to take nothing for granted. Nothing for granted.
Let me make sure my wife is not sleepy. Tana, do you hear what she said?
Time I also learned from you. You're an important person for Yossi since 60 years.
We need to call the other speaker.
No, I learned so much. And I learned from him, never take anything for granted, ask questions, and one of the most important things, I take things with humor. It's important. It makes sometimes things easier. Yossi, thank you for this.
Steffi, thank you very much. So far, 18 years, it went not so bad.
Good. So please meet now. Yossi will be joined by a young man. Where's the young man? Here's the young man. Impressive young man who's joining us from Silicon Valley, where he's currently working as a senior policy advisor to the CEO of Palantir Technologies. Please meet Jacob Helberg. It's his first time at DLD, so please give him a warm welcome. As you might know already, is an international community of thought leaders because of its long-standing strong connections to both Israel and Silicon Valley. I'm happy that I'm connecting at our last session these two important strengths.
Thank you very much. Don't go away. Since this is the last session, we will take 3 minutes for some housekeeping rituals, okay? Steffi, first of all, tell the crowd what we have for the year of 24 in terms of DLD events. We have to do a little bit of promotion.
34, my greatest wish would be that one of my grandchildren sits here on this floor.
Can you bring the girl? Where is she? What else? What events we will have the rest of the year?
Of course, it's the easiest answer I can give you. I wish that there will be peace in the Middle East region and peace in Ukraine, and that we don't fight each other.
No, I mean events we are doing in 2004. 2024. Do a simple promotion, not too sophisticated.
34 in 10 years. My God, what should I know? But in 24, it's an easy question. I think as we did last year, we will have some verticals. We do probably a DLD energy.
Yeah.
As I told you
we
before.
are going to have wonderful events. Stay tuned.
AI and Brussels, Europe, and in Israel. Good.
Now, anybody who wants to come again to be invited to DLD, give a huge round of applause to Steffi who created all this. Very good.
You are re-invited.
As I told you already yesterday, the main challenge of speakers at this slot, which, as I said yesterday, is known as the graveyard slot, 2:30 in the afternoon. Usually everybody falls asleep. We need to put some energy in you. So far, it's going not too bad at all. The next thing which I want to say, we maintain a policy that we keep for 18 years, which is called 100% satisfaction guarantee. And since you are friends, I want to tell you how we are able to keep 100% satisfaction. We simply not invite anybody who is complaining and express dissatisfaction. Who was unhappy with the conference? Raise your hand. Okay, I think they're wake up enough. What do you think?
I think they're awake.
They're awake, okay. So it's really a great pleasure to present to you Jacob Helberg. And as you will learn very soon, he's kind of a think tank on his own, right? It will be a
very generous of you, but
yeah, and he wrote a book, The Wires of War, about the interaction of technology and wars. He is acting as an advisor to the CEO of Palantir. He used to run the Google News space at Google that all of us became addictive to. You have to tell us what are the algorithms you have used. He is running a commission which was nominated by the US, I never know how to call it, Congress, Senate, House of Representatives.
The US Speaker of the House.
US Speaker of the House, about a subject you never heard about called the US-China relations. And we will start by asking you an easy question, and then we will go to the more difficult. Since the ending of Second World War, the world generally went in really a wonderful trajectory, at least the Western world. More liberty, more technology, more democracy. What was the name of this Japanese gentleman, Fukuyama, who wrote the book, The End of History, claimed anything bad which could have happened. From now on, we have great things. Part of it, I met Antonella, raise your hand, in 2000 in a seminar in St. Gallen, and she told all of us that the internet is going to be something wonderful. And really, we had some hiccups, you know. We had few wars, we had few bubble explosions, but all in all, the world was really seems to... Steven Pinker wrote at least 3 books about how wonderful are things, etc. And then all of a sudden, another 1 billion invisible players came into the game. We cannot see them, but we can very much recognize them. They participate on the social networks. They have a voice, they have opinion. Some of them have 2 opinions, some of them have 200 opinions, some of them have 200,000 bots, etc. And things began kind of stall. And the world, all of a sudden, after we saw that Russia became democratic, now we have all kinds of alliances that you may or may not like. And all of us became worried. Each one of us, whether we admit it or not, became worried. And in the recent weeks, we see some horrible things happen. So I need you, I know that you know exactly what's going to happen, and I need you to share with us what is your view about what are the main trends the world goes. And we give you 27 seconds. How much time we have to? 11 minutes. Okay, so Jacob, can you share with us your crystal ball?
So first of all, Yossi and Sevi, thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here at the DLD. The 2 big trends that face the world today and explain a lot of we see on a day-to-day basis are, on the one hand, there is a rapid deterioration of the global security climate. We're seeing a growing alliance between Russia, China, and Iran that is manifesting itself in regional conflicts in the Middle East as well as in Eastern Europe. Obviously, Taiwan held an election today. Taiwan was the subject of an unprecedented intimidation campaign by the Chinese Communist Party. The CCP flew over 1,700 warplanes in 2023 over Taiwan airspace. The tidal wave of disinformation in that election was unprecedented. And the second trend is we're seeing AI fundamentally change political and military warfare. The reason I draw a distinction between political and military is that you mentioned my book earlier, The Wires of War. A big topic of that book basically talks about how warfare is a spectrum. It's not binary. You're not either totally at war or totally at peace, but there is such a thing as gray zone conflict. And one of the big trends of the last decade and a half is because of the advent of commercial dual-use technologies, the aperture of gray zone conflict has substantially increased in the last few years. So we're seeing governments using commercial civilian technologies to compete geopolitically around the world. And disinformation has obviously become a big space, as someone mentioned in the audience earlier. We've seen disinformation in Ukraine. We've seen disinformation related to Israel and Taiwan. So in every hotspot in the world, there's state-backed disinformation that is incredibly active, and AI is unleashing the floodgates of this increasingly.
Where it's going to end, or what are the scenarios?
Well, just like Francis Fukuyama, you brought up Francis Fukuyama at the end of history, and the big conclusion is that history never ended. And so, it's never going to end because governments are going to continue to compete internationally. Right now, I think we're in the middle of a great contest between, on the one hand, China is effectively leading a bloc that is very bent on reversing the outcome of World War II. The Chinese government feels very threatened by the fact that the example of strong, vibrant democracies fundamentally erodes the premise of authoritarianism. The basic bargain of the CCP for years has been, yeah, we know we're not democratic. Yeah, we know you guys don't have rights, but we have prosperity, and we can deliver for citizens. We can build a hospital in 2 weeks. We can, achieve so many different milestones. And we're seeing that bargain start to erode. I mean, Xi Jinping, just in the last few years, disappeared his defense minister, his minister of foreign affairs. By some estimates, there's 3 million Uyghurs that are currently in concentration camps and open-air prisons. So daily life in China is increasingly changing and feels very different than it did just a few years ago. Foreign capital is starting to retreat. And so when we think about, where is it going to end? We're in the middle of a long-term competition between democratic values and authoritarianism.
Yeah, but to be very frank, we have to admit that in recent years, the internet, the social networks exposed many deficiencies and weaknesses in the democratic process. We spoke about China, but what about, I don't want to mention names of countries, but it seems that the democracy also have some issues.
Yeah, so, there's, social media is a very contentious issue. The best way to understand some of the issues that are often talked about in the press and social media, you can divide it into 2 buckets. There is, domestic misinformation that is just inaccuracies in politics, which has always been around. Part of what happened about 10 years ago, platforms, social networks shifted from a chronological feed to an algorithmic feed. So when you log into Facebook and Twitter, you no longer see a feed that's just based on chronological order, but you see a feed that's highly personalized based on your interests, which has amplified the degree to which people find themselves in echo chambers. That's issue number 1. The part of the problem is if you have friends that have very strong viewpoints that are going to share fringe outlets, you're probably going to get that in your feed. Issue number 2 is there is a real fact pattern and a real problem with foreign governments masquerading themselves as domestic news outlets, publishing content to target citizens in your countries and intentionally trying to distort information that you interact with online. I saw that when I worked at Google. Back in those days, Russia was obviously a very early player in that space. Since then, China has by far overtaken everyone in the disinformation space. They spend $10 billion a year on propaganda. They employ over 2 million people in the so-called 50-cent armies. They publish information that they try to spread on regular social networks like Twitter and Facebook, but they also benefit from the fact that ByteDance, which is a CCP-controlled company, owns TikTok, which is now becoming the largest news platform in the US. It has 150 million users in the US. 30% of them get their news from TikTok. It's a major problem. So when you own the platform, you can game the algorithm in a way that pushes proactively information that is favorable to CCP narratives. And I'll just add one more point. If you look at what happened recently with the flare-up, the horrific attacks in Israel, the information that TikTok users get related to Israel, a recent analysis has been done that shows that it's 96.5% pro-Palestine, pro-Hamas, 3.5% pro-Israel. And now look, this is a controversial issue. You compare that data to public polling, and public polling data in the US will show that people are actually split. It's more like 50-50. On TikTok, it's 96.5%. What that tells you is that the algorithm proactively promotes one viewpoint and suppresses another. And you can run that analysis against a lot of other topics like Uyghurs or other issues that the CCP views as problematic, and you're almost not going to find anything on TikTok.
Jacob, in order to be fair, I think we cannot ignore the fact that other than TikTok, you have a number of other minor social networks which are not controlled by the Chinese government. What about them?
And I think I would put them in the first bucket, that I mentioned, which is...
And you mentioned some of them?
I mean, sure, there's Twitter and Facebook,
Instagram.
Go on. And look, personalization is a real concern. People will debate, are these platforms too personalized? Do they create echo chambers? That's a worthy debate to have. Ultimately, that's a fundamentally different debate than the question of, as a democracy, what do we do when a foreign power tries to distort information that we see in our country on a day-to-day basis? Those two things, I think, are very different. In the US, we've had a long-standing law that puts restrictions on the foreign ownership of TV stations and media stations because of that same concern. Social media companies are not subject to ownership restrictions like traditional media companies. There's a debate to be had about, why are we drawing the distinction between social media and regular media companies? So I think those are two important debates that should be treated differently.
What is more dangerous in your view, AI or social networks?
So they're both kind of interlinked in the sense that social networks use machine learning and some might call it AI to personalize their feeds. I'm much more concerned about the use of AI in a warfare context because artificial intelligence, deviates a little bit from the topic of social networks, but if you look at the wars in Ukraine and the wars in Israel, we're already seeing these wars being laboratories for some of the most advanced technologies out there. So the Russians, the Chinese, they're all in Ukraine testing, the newest, latest technology to basically see how it works, see what the flaws are, how to improve it. And you're going to see a revolution in AI used for targeting. You're going to see a revolution in AI used for decision making. And what that means from concretely is that the window, if you're a NATO commander, the amount of time that you're going to have to respond to real-world events is going to shrink dramatically, because you're going to be facing off with an adversary that's going to be powered by artificial intelligence that's going to make decisions really, really fast. And so there's going to be a bit of a race in terms of who's going to have the best AI to move faster, which could lead to a lot of a very combustible environment.
Two last questions. One, what about the addictive nature of all these new offerings?
It's all, I work with a lot of members of Capitol Hill, a number of which have called TikTok digital fentanyl because it's so addictive. Again, these are really worthy debates to be had. I mean, China banned TikTok, Iran bans TikTok. Obviously, people spend on average 2 hours a day on TikTok. It's super addictive. It's not the only platform, as you said. I mean, Instagram is also a very addictive platform. I think there's a healthy debate to be had about, as a society, how we want to handle that.
And I know that you are interested.
Sorry to interrupt this really fascinating discussion. But everyone who has to go to Davos by bus, please leave immediately, because the bus is, due to German bus drivers' regulation, is leaving at 3 o'clock sharp. So
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye. I'm sorry for this, but
two questions
and go to the registration, and the bus will be there. Thank you for this.
I think that Steffi simply got scared about our discussion of the non-TikTok networks. No.
Go ahead.
Two questions very quickly. We began to talk about the addictive nature of the things. In order to finish, Kahneman made a research, and he determined that what you take away from experience is the high moment of the experience and the ending point of the experience, and we cannot finish 3 days of discussions with a gloomy view. So tell us, what are the positive things you see in the future? Do the future have any bright, promising points?
So I spent a lot of time in Washington, where obviously the dominant topic of the day is how do we advance democracy in an intensifying competition with China? And that debate is often characterized by, on the one hand, people that either say, it's totally overblown, don't worry about it, they have so many problems. And on the other hand, people that basically say, we can't do anything about it, we're totally screwed, they're so big, it's already lost. My note of optimism is that the reality is that it's going to be a close contest, and we have agency based on the decisions that as a country and as a West collectively we make to actually determine the outcome. And so it's a word of empowerment that I think we're not destined to win, but we're not destined to fail either.
I thought we can throw into the game things like health, productivity of food making, etc., but probably we'll leave it for the next session. And the last thing, I understand that you are expert in geography, and you have an event called Hill and Valley, right?
The Hill and Valley Forum.
Can you tell us about the Hill and Valley?
The Hill and Valley Forum is a gathering I organize in Washington that brings together policymakers and technology CEOs to build trust between two communities that have a very fraught relationship. Silicon Valley and Washington, for a long time, had a very adversarial relationship, but technologists and policymakers are fundamentally in the business of building the future. They just use different tools to do it. And, in the US, I viewed it as a national security priority to bring those two communities together to solve some of our hardest problems. And it's been an incredibly productive investment to organize this gathering, and a number of legislative bills in the US have actually come out of that forum, including $1 billion for emerging technologies in the defense budget.
Great. Ladies and gentlemen, with this statement, we are finishing the 2024 Munich DLD. Steffi, you have the last word.
Thank you. Thank you.
Optimism! Optimism!